It is my pleasure to turn it over to George to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Demings, for your support of this important industry. Bev, tell us about our amazing keynote speaker.
Thank you, George. Our keynote speaker is AIEye Peck, founder and CEO of Endeavor XR, a leading global AR/VR XR strategy and consulting firm. She's a recognized thought leader in the space and speaks globally on the future of XR and emerging technologies such as 5G, AI, and blockchain. She's a venture partner at the Capital Region AR/VR Accelerator, holds several advisory board roles, and was founding co-chair of the Viara Enterprise Committee.
Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm AIEye Peck. I'm the CEO of Endeavor XR. So let's talk about innovating innovation, visualizing future outcomes with simulations and AI. So what is AI? Now, normally you see just 3 rings. This one has automation added at the top as kind of the doing element. But AI is the overarching kind of umbrella that encompasses machine learning and deep learning. Machine learning uses more structured data sets and is transparent. And then deep learning is an opaque AI and uses unstructured data sets. And the fundamental difference is that with machine learning, you have visibility into how the algorithm is actually processing data. With deep learning, you're actually training the AI to optimize itself. So there's a layer that is completely opaque so that even the machine could not tell you how it's optimizing itself. So deep learning in some ways replicates human thought, but it also raises some challenges, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And how will we use AI? So this shows 3 layers, the first being the infrastructure to support AI, and then in the center are some of the verticals that are using AI today. And then here's the landscape. And I'm not going to go into a deep dive on each one of these slides, but I will make each of these slides available to you after. So this is the AI technology landscape. So you have all the different types of AI on one side, and then you have some of the ways that we're going to be using it in the future. And then here are the top 10 industrial use cases, and not surprisingly, predictive maintenance, quality inspection, a lot of use cases for manufacturing and supply chain. And we'll see many more types of companies leveraging AI in the future. And then the overall global market is growing, though the market is quite fragmented with multiple players in the space, and there are more and more coming in every day. And of course, these are the top verticals and use cases. Again, I don't want to go through all of these individually, but essentially there are use cases for virtually any company. And then this is a really good snapshot of how you should be thinking about, a platform to enable AI, or really any technology, by creating a mechanism for acquiring, managing, and storing data that then can be used in multiple algorithms to support multiple business units. So the net is that with AI, we're seeing that efficiencies and ROI are going up, up, up. So here's a little video for you. So that was a great example of AI in manufacturing, but everything has changed. It's interesting that this slide almost seems dated at this point, but the reality is that this is the time to start to formulate the building blocks for a completely new way of how we innovate in the future. So in just a few short months, we've gone from this, or actually probably looks more like this, and the work-life balance has shifted to life-work balance. And what that really means is that people are rethinking how and even where they live to prioritize family, lifestyle, and experiences. Now, this lifestyle focus is not new. It's already a trend, especially with millennials and Gen Z behind them. But now lifestyle choices will be front and center. And this is relevant because this is your workforce, and in a lot of cases, it's your consumer. Now, how will we define this new normal? So the first thing we need to do as companies is, as the title of this talk suggests, innovate innovation. And that may sound a little bit confusing, but aside from rethinking how to innovate our workspaces and workforce, we have to rethink how we innovate our products and services. But we also have to evolve the very process of innovation itself. And it's not a contradiction. It's about coming up with a completely new construct for innovation. The way we do it today, we have our R&D labs or innovation hubs, but often they're subject to sort of our existing working environments, and their budgets expand and contract based on the market. But what needs to happen is these innovation centers need to work independently outside of an organization and have full cover from the C-suite. And they have to have irrevocable budgets. That's critical. I know that sounds scary, but it is critical. Then we have to change our thinking to an opportunity mindset versus reacting to the uncertainty that's currently around us. So we've been very much in a reactive mode from the beginning of the pandemic, just scrambling to put any mechanisms in place for remote work. But now we need to move to proactive mode. So we're not going back to work in the same way that we did before, and our lifestyles have changed as well. So we have to take a moment to consider what are the products and services of the future to serve this new paradigm in work and lifestyle. So how do we change and grow with this shift? Then we leverage multiple technologies, including AI, to impact this growth. The innovation today is like throwing round dice with no numbers. Now, it has actually been pointed out to me that round dice with no numbers are in fact marbles. However, my point is, as I discussed, it really is a challenge for companies to innovate within the current construct. It's like innovation in a box. There are many strategies like agile methodologies and design thinking that help innovation along, and these are great. But they're very process oriented. And what tends to happen as soon as we build a process for something, then we fall back on that process, and that by its very nature is not innovating. And we're in an age now where we have to be much more fluid and elastic in the way we're thinking about the future, because it's coming. There's a tsunami of technology, and it's moving at breakneck pace. So in order to keep up with it, we have to have a much more kind of volumetric thinking construct. This is my technology tree. I actually ran out of branches. There's so much more technology out there, and then each of these technologies has its own subset of technology. And it's already a challenge to be an expert in any one of these, let alone all of them. So this is why, as part of this new innovation dynamic, we need to engage cross-functional teams. No longer can innovation and R&D labs be these secretive hubs. We have to have open and transparent innovation, and everyone needs to have a voice in this innovation process. Because IoT is no longer IoT, it's IoE. It's the Internet of everything. And big data is no longer big data, it is massive data. So we just talked about how AI can be so impactful, but really the impact is in the convergence of multiple technologies. So I do want to take some time to go through a few of these different technologies. Now, typically when I do these talks live, I would say, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the term blockchain? And then, of course, everyone would shout out Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. But cryptocurrency is a subset of blockchain, and blockchain is so much more than cryptocurrency. Both of these have an impact in the future. With blockchain, we can leverage some of the obvious things like smart contracts and ethical sourcing. But beyond that, there are completely new economic constructs and even a parallel digital economy. And with autonomous vehicles, we think immediately of self-driving cars, but there are drones, UAVs, unmanned spacecrafts, and ships. So autonomy is also very much coming into its own. And when we think of robotics, mostly we think of automation, but then there are actual robots, and then there are exoskeletons. So we already have augmented reality, and with exoskeletons, we have, augmented physicality. But really, technology is going to augment everything in our lives. So we're truly becoming augmented humans. And then virtual reality. I don't know how many of you saw Ready Player One or read the book, but those virtual worlds are already here. And the difference between sort of virtual, mixed, and augmented reality is that virtual reality is really a destination. You're going into virtual reality with a purpose. You're going in to learn something, experience something, play something, or build something. And then, of course, 5G is going to be an enabler of a lot of this technology, especially around content delivery. And it will also help us move large amounts of data, both upstream and downstream. The edge effectively brings the cloud closer and reduces latency. And AI will help us dynamically weight compute requirements between cloud, edge, and mobile devices. Augmented reality is really going to be ubiquitous. We don't have the consumer wearables yet, but they're coming. We know Apple is building AR glasses. Facebook has announced a deal with Luxottica, who own Ray-Ban. So these magic wayfarers may actually look like wayfarers. We talk a lot about digital twins in manufacturing and in simulation. We can build digital twins and then apply an AI layer to run multiple scenarios to gain more data and understanding of how we can optimize processes and sequences. However, we need to think much more broadly, because what's coming is the AR cloud, which is effectively a digital twin of the entire planet. And this is going to enable all sorts of data and experiences to be at our fingertips at all times. So this forms the basis for spatial computing. So everything you're doing on your mobile device today, you will be able to do using a wearable in the future. We're going to move from screens to interacting with data and digital objects in space, so all around us. So effectively, the world will become your screen. And within this AR cloud, we'll have layer upon layer of data, from infrastructure and government to utilities to healthcare to games and entertainment. And along with AI, all of these technologies are going to blend for the smart cities of the future. So in order to make sense of how to bring all of this technology together, we have to include a very humanistic perspective. We know what we can build, but what do we want to build and why?
When everything becomes linked with everything else, matter becomes mind, and the possibilities become endless. Imagine 50 billion IoT connected devices by 2020. Now, imagine the economic impact of these connected machines. $4 to $11 trillion per year by 2025. Wearable devices, environmental sensors, agricultural machinery, components in a vehicle, or devices in homes can all be connected to deliver insights and drive transformation. So imagine if you had smart devices in your home, your car, your workplace, or even on yourself. The world becomes alive. That's Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is making everyday objects into data factories. When Internet of Things, along with big data, meets artificial intelligence, this interface will become enlivened with intelligence, and a new world will take birth, which will increasingly talk back to us. Imagine the kind of world that it would be. Imagine the revolution it will usher in the way we see the world. The external world will become the extension of our mind, like an extension of our thoughts. Imagine a world that is responsive, A world that is optimized for human creativity. A world that is intelligent. The Internet of Things is a breeding ground for new AI-driven solutions and experiences, from self-driving cars to intelligent homes to health. Welcome to the world of endless possibilities.
Let's dive a little deeper. Despite the slightly odd accent, that video depicts a good vision of what the future can hold, especially for smart cities, and how it supports this lifestyle that we need to consider as part of our innovation. So we know that no one ever gets fired for choosing to work with all the big players, Intel, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Verizon, etc. But there are many small companies who are focused on this bigger vision for how we will live in the future, who are working in one specific lane, solving one specific piece of this puzzle. And I know I keep mentioning personal lifestyle, and this is not necessarily top of mind in large companies because it's very much focused on how we as individuals are going to be living our lives in the future, taking into consideration, entertainment, social media, gaming, all the things that we're doing as consumers. But the companies that are going to win in the future will have a really, really clear vision of where we are headed as individuals, and they will shape their products and services towards that end. I know it's a trite example, but Blockbuster saw Netflix coming. And do you know what Netflix saw? They saw that people wanted content delivered to their homes. And so video streaming was born. So I'm going to talk about, a few of these smaller companies and how they fit into this sort of bigger strategy. So Mobile Mesh, this is an image from a company called 6D AI, which was just acquired by Niantic. So it uses the camera on your smartphone and you can quickly scan a room. It'll then make a mobile mesh of that area so it recognizes the objects that are already in your room. So then if you turn on your augmented reality and introduce a digital object into your space, it'll behave the way it would in real life. So there's occlusion if it goes behind a chair in your room. And also the physics will be accurate. So if you have a ball and it bounces off the table, it'll behave the way a real ball would in the real world. So when you start to think about this layered digital landscape that's going on all around us in the AR cloud, but on top of that, there'll be all manner of experiences linked to different locations and unlocked based on permissions or discovery mechanisms. So imagine this sort of invisible graffiti that is there to discover. The new iPhones will have LiDAR, so we can start to crowdsource interior spaces as well, so we can bring realistic digital experiences into our own personal spaces. This is a company called Geonet, and they do volumetric spatial control. So essentially what they've done is they've gridded the entire planet down to square millimeters. And then they've assigned each millimeter an IP address from their own block of IPv6. And to those IP addresses, they can append any manner of data. And so it's essentially will allow 3D geofencing, right? Many other applications, but that's sort of their initial focus. So they also have what's called the GTLD, which is essentially a domain extension .place. So you can register a physical space just like you would a website, and then control mobile behaviors and access in that space. And all of this follows existing network protocols. So it simply extends content and rules to physical space. This company is called AIEye, as in AEYE. So LiDAR is light detection and ranging. But they have actually added AI and proprietary algorithms, turning it into intelligent detection and ranging. So with the AI, the data is seen much like the way the human eye sees, so focused on the important elements in any scene. But what they do for autonomous vehicles is they take in all of the data around the vehicle, and they recognize fixed objects from the digital twin that lives in the AR cloud, and then it will dynamically discard any data that's not relevant to the safe driving of the car and focus on anomalies in the scene, like, for example, a child running into the street. But all of that data that's getting discarded can be used to true up the AR cloud because there are fixed objects like buildings that don't often change, but windows break and signs get bent, none of that was me, and trees get trimmed. And so that LiDAR scan contains all the current data. So we dynamically redraw so that that digital twin maintains its accuracy. Humancentric Identity. Now, this is a big topic, so I won't delve too deep, but this covers a number of things about who we are in the digital landscape. So our avatars will be our verifiable digital identities and live on the blockchain. And we can have our public persona like social media, and then our private persona that secures all of our private data like healthcare and finances. But it can also be a way for us to take back control and manage our own data and potentially even monetize that data. Again, this is a big topic, but it's very much a big part of the future digital landscape. There are many more companies out there, but this gives you a snapshot of how we have to have this holistic approach to technology and innovation because they're all inextricably connected. And AI impacts all of these. So we will have AI machine learning and deep learning layers that will be embedded into all of these systems. So it is critical for us to make sure we understand the implications of using AI so we put the right safety mechanisms in place. Maybe we can build a simulation for the algorithm with a digital twin of the algorithm itself. Just kidding, but maybe not. So with all of this technology comes a massive responsibility. And I'm a very big believer in this protopian vision of future technology, but we still have to consider what could go wrong. We're all fearful of the rise of the machines. We've all seen Westworld. So what are the things we don't understand? And when I talked earlier about opaque AI, that's why you hear people like Elon Musk saying, AI is the greatest threat to humanity. Love him or not, he's a pretty smart guy, and he's worried. This is because with opaque AI, we can't see, nor can the machine tell us how they are changing the logic in their own algorithms to support their behavior or end goal. So we have this expression, know what you don't know. But we can't know what we don't know in this case because there are logic constructs that are ingrained in our very being and in our way of thinking. And then we take these for granted. So in a lot of cases, we don't even consider putting these kinds of rules in as parameters for how we're training these AIs. And so, as a result, occasionally there are some AI fails.
Looking for intelligence on Facebook can feel like a bit of a struggle sometimes. Perhaps for this reason, Facebook decided to release some artificial intelligences onto its social network in 2017. The result was not at all what they had been expecting. The two chatbots began to talk to each other in a language which they, but no one else, could understand. Beginning with English, their chat soon turned into something else as they made changes to the language to make it more efficient to communicate. A sample of their trade negotiations runs as follows. Bob: I can, I everything else. Alice: balls have zero to me, 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 too. Bob: you, I, everything else. Alice: balls have a ball to me, to me, to me, to me, to me, to me. While many reports hinted that this was a dark development for machine intelligence, others think we simply need to be stricter with the minds we create. The robots created their own language because they were not told to stay within the rules of English. Also, with AI, we always, at the moment, have the option of pulling their plugs. The Chinese government is notoriously harsh on criticism, whoever is voicing it. So when a chatbot in China began to criticize the ruling Communist Party, operators were quick to turn it off. In 2017, Tencent QQ, a messenger app, introduced two cute chatbots called Baby Q and Little Bing, taking the form of a penguin and a little girl, but they soon began to say non-cute things. Because the bots were programmed to learn from chats to be better able to communicate, they soon picked up some unorthodox opinions. One user who stated, "Long live the Communist Party," was asked by Baby Q, "Do you think that such a corrupt and incompetent political regime can live forever?" Another user was told, "There needs to be a democracy." Little Bing was asked what its Chinese dream was. Its response wasn't exactly out of Mao's Little Red Book. "My Chinese dream is to go to America." The bots were quickly shut down. Self-driving cars.
Self-driving cars are all the rage nowadays, and although it sounds like a good idea in theory, the technology still has a long way to go. A video was recently posted on YouTube demonstrating Volvo's self-driving car brake system. A team of engineers are grouped in front of the car as the Volvo backs up. The car then speeds toward them to test the brake, except this time, the car doesn't stop. It totally rams into one of the engineers at full speed. Ouch! The camera goes out of focus at that point, so we don't get to see whether this guy was totally run over or if the car got the message and backed up. This is too scary for words. Either this car had a secret agenda or Volvo needs to step up their self-driving technology game. The Google Home Personal Assistant was released in 2016 and sold as a smart speaker that can answer any question you throw at it. Much like an Alexa, the Google Home Personal Assistant would respond when spoken to. This was taken to full advantage in January 2017, when a live debate between two Google speakers was streamed on Twitch and lasted several days. By the end of the debate, the speakers were named Vladimir and Estragon of the iconic play Waiting for Godot due to the existential nature of their conversation. They would go back and forth on subjects to no end, including an argument on whether or not they are humans or robots. The conversation got pretty aggressive after a while, with one speaker accusing the other of being a manipulative bunch of metal. At the end of the debate, they both came to the conclusion that the world would be a better place if there were no humans at all. I guess Vladimir and Estragon will just be waiting, patiently, for their turn to take over. BINA 48, which translates to Breakthrough Intelligence via Neural Architecture 48, is one of the most advanced robots on the planet. This humanoid-like robot is known to have all the faculties of a human, including eyes that see, a face that moves, ears that hear, and a digital mind that can form thoughts, not dissimilar to a human one. A video was recently released by her makers where BINA 48 is asked simple questions by Siri, like where would you like to live, and what's your greatest characteristic? Sounds harmless enough, but the weird part about the interview is that BINA 48 keeps trying to veer the conversation to topics of world domination and ends up revealing her creepily detailed plan to take over the world by hacking into a nuclear missile remotely. The conversation feels eerie and just straight up terrifying. She may be one of the smartest robots in the world, but she's not very good at reading a room.
So yeah, some of these are lighthearted and funny, and some of them are kind of sinister. And certainly the people who are putting these videos out on YouTube have a very specific perspective and not necessarily a scientific one. And they're trying to tell this particular story about AI, but there is some truth to the dangers of AI. So we have to look at how AI is built from all angles and include a broader swath of the population for perspective and to combat unintended or unconscious bias. We have to reconstruct the way we think about innovation, but we also have to really build a much better understanding of AI and all of the technologies, and then how they're going to integrate with one another. Because it's all fun and games while you're in control of the dragon. But we have to train the dragon being AI. So we're racing towards this unknown future, and it's kind of like trying to make a movie in 17 languages with no script. And we're very busy using technology to optimize processes, but everything we're doing is siloed. We have different companies coming up with different solutions. Even within your own company, there might be multiple groups working independently. There are plenty of futurists and people researching and developing what's going to be coming over the next half a century. But it's very much from the lens of our individual companies. This really needs to change. We need to have a much bigger overarching vision on a global level, on a company level, and then on a personal and lifestyle level. The key is what I call volumetric thought, or thinking in multiple dimensions. We live in a 3D world, but we're used to dealing with 2D data. Volumetric thinking is connecting a disparate set of constructs and combining conventional critical thinking. But we have to layer in our own personal wants and needs and our creativity. And this will help us get clarity on what we want this evolution of man and machine to look like. So how do we innovate innovation? Well, no one was asking for the iPhone, but Steve Jobs was a volumetric thinker. He was projecting himself into the future and envisioning the products that he himself would want. And that's why he was such a visionary. But we are all completely capable of this type of thought and of being visionaries ourselves. We just lose touch with it from the time we're kids. Remember when we used to create these outlandish scenarios like, I'm going to build a spaceship and I'm going to fly it to Saturn and meet some aliens and bring them home to dinner so they can meet my pet giraffe, Arnold, who happens to be purple and loves peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It sounds completely insane. But it's this very sort of childlike, nascent way of thinking volumetrically, bringing together all of these disparate, seemingly impossible concepts together. So this wasn't part of the video, but those Facebook chatbots, their dialogue and the way the AI was learning was eerily similar to the way a child learns. So it's interesting that the algorithm steered its learning to see things from a child's perspective. So it's interesting and perhaps very telling. If we can teach ourselves how to think this way as adults, being able to inject rational thought into this fantastical creative thinking, we will come up with 1,000 crazy ideas, but one that just might be life-changing. So part of the exercise here is for each of us to individually look at what you want your world in 2050 and beyond to look like. And older people, I'm not naming names, often say, well, I'm not going to be around then, or I'll be too old. That's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to invent our own futuristic vision. Then we can start to answer the question, what is the future? What is the future of work, of play, of education, entertainment, identity, value, commerce, data, security? What is the future of us? And when I'm talking about innovating innovation, I'm talking about moving forward and actually catapulting ourselves into the future to imagine what we want that future to look like. Not where we think it's going, like it's some kind of unstoppable train, but actually project ourselves there and create that vision. So it's time for us to write a new story. We need to become the futurists and storytellers of our own lives, and then bring those visions back and build an innovation strategy from there. What haven't we imagined? So how do we start? Well, just define your own vision for the future, and then work backwards from that future. Start at your destination. Then take that vision and consider how to evolve your products to meet that vision. You envision tomorrow and then validate today. Look at how technologies can be combined to bring this future vision to fruition for both your personal life, but also how this can shape your work. And we should not be using technology just to do the exact same things we do now, only faster. Let's focus on doing everything better. Because technology is our friend, for now. So let's use technology to connect us. Again, we shouldn't be fearful of robots taking over our jobs and making us irrelevant. We can change perspective and consider this an opportunity to better our lives and become better humans. Humanity is our currency in this next digital age. And the future is superhuman. So I'll wrap up with this quote from Alan Kay. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Thanks so much for joining today.